think the action by the Republicans is contemptible. I think they thought it was going to go their way and they'd have like a 1-2 punch. They might have a 1-2 punch, but it might be coming their way.
Welcome back to the Ed Show. That was part of what House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi had to say about the farce that took place on the House floor today. For the first time in American history, a cabinet member was held in contempt of Congress by the full House of Representatives. The criminal contempt vote against Attorney General Eric Holder passed with the votes of 238 Republicans and 17 Democrats. 2 Republicans voted against it. The civil contempt vote passed by similar margins, all led by Republican Congressman Darrell Issa and his House Oversight Committee. The Congressional Black Caucus led a walkout, and they were joined by most Democrats in protesting this ugly political ploy.
This is not about oversight. This is about overkill. We're here to say today that we believe that there's something evil about using the procedures of the House, especially something as severe as holding someone in contempt of Congress to further political aims. Is not why the American people sent us here.
The criminal contempt citation will now be referred to a U.S. attorney to decide whether his boss, the Attorney General Eric Holder, is a criminal. This is not likely to happen. The civil contempt charge is referred to a federal judge to decide if Holder must turn over more documents. Today, Attorney General Eric Holder called this for what it is.
Today's vote may make for good political theater in the minds of some, but it is at base both a crass effort and a grave disservice to the American people. It's clear that they were not interested in bringing an end to this dispute or even obtaining the information they say they wanted. Ultimately, their goal was the vote that, with the help of special interest, they now have engineered. A great deal of work for the American people remains to be done. I'm going to be getting back to it. I suggest that those who orchestrated today's vote do the same.
Let's turn to Congressman Keith Ellison of Minnesota, co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Strange day at the office. I think the Republicans thought they were going to be 2-0. They lost the ruling, and then, of course, they did get this. A political stunt, no doubt. How furious are Democrats over this?
Well, I think that we're disgusted. I think that's the main prevailing emotion. You know, of course, we're angry, but it's when you see somebody misuse the political process this way to score a cheap political point. And here's the other thing. I was talking to some of the people who were voting for it. They said that the NRA, the National Rifle Association, scored it, and which means that they're going to get you if you don't go their way. And so, I mean, that was unfortunate. The Attorney General alluded to special interest. That's the special interest that's at work here.
You think the NRA intimidated those 17 Democrats?
Yes. I think there's very little doubt of it. In fact, I challenged them to deny it. They made it very clear it would be a scored vote. And you know, I mean, look, they have a monopoly on the conversation around guns. And their logic's convoluted, though, because what they were seeming to suggest is that their vote against Holder would, because they thought that this might bring forth gun control legislation or might justify gun control legislation.
That's bogus.
Well, it's it's absurd. But, you know, it proves that they have been so successful on Capitol Hill, they got to go look for people to fight with.
Here's more from Leader Nancy Pelosi and Eric Holder today.
Their floor premise is false. I contend that it has more to do with tying the hands of the Attorney General, whose responsibility is to stop the voter suppression that is out there.
Challenging proposed voting changes and redistricting maps that would potentially disenfranchise millions of voters. Now, some of these enforcement decisions were not politically popular and help to explain the actions that were taken today by the House.
Holder was a class act today. I think he handled it about as good as he could handle it. Congressman, you got a lot of work to do yet in the House. The transportation bill, you still haven't done student loans. The Senate's done it. How's it going to be like working with these Republicans under this situation?
Well, you know, it's ridiculous. I mean, we just go week after week after week where they don't put any jobs legislation. They're letting the cost of an education go up. They're not dealing with transportation, which if we don't get this thing done, it's going to cause layoffs all over this country. I mean, it reminds me of their malfeasance malfeasance on the FAA bill last year, where they let where they let all those people get out of work and they let all the costs mount. It's legislative malpractice, and that's all I can call it.
Back to the National Rifle Association, if I may. Why can't Democrats get in caucus and say this? Here's what we say. I'm not going to vote for contempt, and I'm not going to take your firearm.
Well, you know what? If we're dealing with rational people, I think we'd be in a different space. But look, we've had a rash of very serious things happen with guns in this country, not the least of which is the tragedy in Tucson, and yet you don't see any major gun control legislation moving forward. Why? Because these people have got a stranglehold, and I think I'm not speculating. I was told on good authority that is why many of the people voted the way they did, because they feared, because this was a scored vote by the NRA.
Congressman Keith Ellison, thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it so much.